Rose Donofrio. Her name was Rose Donofrio, and she stood about, 4'10" perhaps. About 4'10", 95 to 100 pounds, no more. She walked a little slow, but purposeful. She couldn't hear, and she couldn't speak any English. So for me, it was tricky to communicate. And besides praying, her biggest delight, right next to prayer, which she did all the time, her biggest delight was making the sauce for the pasta, and to feed her family. And she would begin this process at 5:30 in the morning, banging pots and pans and waking up her household. And that was her delight. By society standards, Rose flew under the radar. She didn't have a lot of money. She didn't have a job. Again, she couldn't speak English. So by all accounts in our world, she was kind of overlooked. But her love, her ferocity, her independence, her heart, she touched me and touched our family like nobody's business. Because Rose was my great-grandmother. This is who I kept thinking about when I read our Hebrew Bible passage today, about the parable about the woman who hides the yeast in the bread. And if we think that Rose Donofrio was devalued in our society, women in the ancient Mediterranean were devalued even more. And so for Jesus to lift up a parable used to transform people, used to really try to put words to the spiritual and sacredness of life, then we listen, because this was subversive, this was revolutionary to lift up this woman and use it in a parable. Same thing when we hear about Leah and Rachel. Leah and Rachel were, for all intents and purposes, pawns in the marriage process. They didn't have a say. They didn't have a say in their marriage. And so, again, we hear about folks who are ordinary, yet doing extraordinary things. Because eventually what they do is grow Abraham and Sarah's family, and then, and on into generations. So under the radar women in both the Hebrew Bible passage and our gospel. And then we have, as another parable, I brought with us, I showed some of you, we have the mustard seed, which we've heard over and over again. We know about the mustard seed. But I brought a jar of it, which I found in our kitchen cabinet, which we've used before for recipes. And I want you all, it looks like a lot in here, and many of you know. I mean, this is how small a mustard seed is. Teeny tiny. And Greg looked up, these are brown mustard seed. There's different colors, right? Yellow and white. I don't know if you can see. Super tiny, right? Laura, super tiny. You can't even, this is a whole bunch of them, right? Everybody have a look, y'all probably know. Oh, what does Jesus say? Jesus says, the mustard seed is going to grow in its ordinariness, here's just one of them, into extraordinary, the greatest shrub which I always get a crack up. I always chuckle at that. That the mustard seed, the bush, is the greatest shrub. This under the radar little seed is going to turn into this beautiful shrub that becomes the home for countless creatures in the world. It becomes the bird's home. This tiny little seed. What great news for us, friends. Uh-oh, I spilled some. We're going to be okay. What great news for us that we can see the extraordinary in the ordinary. And how perfect for us in this week as we mourn the loss of two people who passed away this week in our parish. And I just found out about a beloved pet. We are shocked and we grieve. The two people are Lisa Driscoll and Sharon Harmony. And so many of us have been really going through it this week. And I didn't know Sharon. I met her one time. But I received a call this week from Treehouse Humane Society. And for those of you who don't know Treehouse, it's a wonderful cat sanctuary to take care of kitty cats and find homes for them when they can. And Sharon volunteered there. And the socialization director of the organization called, and she said, I am so sorry to hear about the loss of Sharon. She was our adoption specialist. She said, but what struck me about her is that she would go to a shift for a few hours as an adoption specialist, and then she would come to me as the director of socialization, and she would sit with me for an hour and ask me questions about all the kitty cats in the room, because she wanted to make sure that when she came back, she had all that she could to know about these cats so she could make the right match with the owners. She said, I was so struck by the extra work and love and tenderness she gave to our organization and to the kitty cats. Now, Sharon is another example of under the radar, quietly walking through life, doing extraordinary things. And we are all touched by those extraordinary things. And that's how the kingdom of heaven continues to grow and touch and have a ripple effect upon everyone. All these different things that we do, how we love, how we move through the world, how we take care of one another. And so, in conclusion, the great news, the best news of this week and of these readings and this gospel is that God sees us all. We are not separated by anything. God sees us all, especially under the radar folks and animals and plants and all those around us, the small, tiny mustard seed. She sees all of us, many of which who've been told that they are less than, people who are less than, told by society, because of our society standards of power and heterosexism and wealth and privilege, said, you are not enough. But today's gospel tells us otherwise. It's in folks who are unassuming and doing the day-to-day and the ordinary. And again, the ripple effects of our gifts that we share with the world, God sees them, exalts us, and cheers us on. The Rose Donofrios making the sauce at 5:30 in the morning. The woman who hid the yeast And the bread grew into this beautiful, delicious leavened bread. Our mustard seed that grows for the birds to have their homes in. The Sharon Harmonings who touch so many different lives through the connection of animals and love. So this week, like Jesus, may we recognize the kingdom of heaven in all of God's children and creatures. And may we be inspired to keep going and know that we are, through our actions, through loving one another up, through doing all the things, we are creating God's kingdom on earth, doing ordinary things for extraordinary ripple effects. Amen.